Jagmeet, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Nina. I'm really, first of all, thankful to be able to meet the tenant union representing York South-Weston. They're doing really important work, and it's an honor to be able to meet you all. So thank you for taking the time. They toured me around a number of buildings, and I just want to talk about what I saw and what I heard. We've got people living in rent-controlled buildings that are seeing above guideline increases again and again. Rents are being jacked up. We saw a building that received federal and provincial funds for repairs. And despite having taken that federal money, the provincial money, they then still charge their tenants a massive increase and again, above guideline increases. So again and again, we're seeing tenants getting ripped off by corporate landlords. And this is not a surprising thing. This is happening again and again across the country where corporate landlords are ripping off their tenants. They're not maintaining their buildings. They're not maintaining the safety and security and cleanliness of the buildings. And they're also increasing rents far beyond what they should be doing. And then we also saw buildings that didn't have rent control, and they're even worse. Again and again, what we're seeing is the rules that have been written by liberals and conservatives have set it up so that corporate landlords can rip off tenants, can exploit tenants, can continue to jack up their rents. And we have people living there that say, we don't know where we're going to go. If the rents keep on rising the way they are, if we keep on getting gouged the way we're getting gouged, we don't know where we're going to end up because there's nowhere else to go. That's the reality for so many people. And I met with those folks. They're saying, well, what about, where am I going to live? Where am I going to go? And I got to say that this has to end. The rules that have been written to give these corporate landlords so much advantages, to stack the decks in their favor, have to change. We've got to change the rules to protect these folks, the tenants, people, families, young people. They have to be protected. So what we're calling for is, if any corporate landlord, we're putting you on notice, if a corporate landlord gets any federal support, any federal money, sometimes they get lower interest rates, preferential tax treatment, sometimes they're getting government-backed insurance. If you're getting any federal help, and you are ripping off your tenants, you're gouging your tenants, you're not maintaining a safe and clean place, we're going to cancel that corporate welfare. Cancel that federal money going to you. There's no way federal money should be going to any of these corporate landlords that are hurting their tenants, that are ripping off their tenants, that are exploiting their tenants. That's what our message is today. The federal government has the power and the leverage through these incentives to hold these corporate landlords to account, and that's what we're fighting for today. And again, I'm really honored to be able to meet these great folks that are doing that organizing on the ground. I'll do that again in French, and then I look forward to your questions. Je viens de rencontrer, premièrement, je suis reconnaissant du travail de cet organisme, un organisme qui travaille ici pour les locataires. Donc, merci pour votre travail, c'est vraiment important. Et on a parlé avec des résidents, des appartements, et ils ont partagé leur histoire. Et ce qui se passe, c'est on a des locataires qui habitent dans des édifices où il y a des grandes entreprises qui sont les propriétaires. Et effectivement, ils exploitent les gens. Et c'est inacceptable. Ils augmentent le loyer, ils ne gardent pas la sécurité ou ils ne gardent pas une bonne condition pour les appartements. Et c'est inacceptable. En plus, ils reçoivent, ces grandes entreprises reçoivent l'argent fédéral. Et malgré ça, continuent d'augmenter les loyers. Donc, c'est inacceptable. On a un message clair. Si vous êtes une entreprise propriétaire des appartements et vous recevez l'argent fédéral, on va annuler cet argent si vous exploitez les gens, si vous augmentez le loyer dans une manière qui est injuste, si vous ne maintiennez pas la propriété. Donc, ça, c'est notre message. On doit changer les règles parce que les règles écrites par les libéraux et les conservateurs avantagent les grandes entreprises, favorisent les grandes entreprises et ça fait mal aux locataires, ça fait mal aux gens. Et on doit changer ça. On doit changer les règles pour protéger les familles, les travailleurs, les gens, pas les grandes entreprises qui font des profits massifs. Ça, c'est notre appel aujourd'hui. On dit directement à ces entreprises, arrêtez d'exploiter les gens. On va changer les règles écrites par les libéraux et les conservateurs pour avantager les gens. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
We're going to start with questions on site. Maybe we'll start with CBC. We'll do one question, one follow-up.
Hi, over here, Lauren Butler,
yes.
CBC. Have you seen any increase in threats and risk to yourself over the past year?
In terms of specific threats, I've been repeating this, and I think it's important that I go through the RCMP's assessment. I trust their work to keep us safe. There's certainly been an increase, though, in threats and harassment for elected officials. We've heard from particularly women and marginalized community members that are feeling really targeted and attacked. And I want to speak to this. I want a clear message on this. People should be able to disagree. You can vehemently disagree. You should be able to express your opinion. You should be able to raise concerns. You should be able to say that you don't agree with the policy and that you're really upset at it. But it should not be that we treat political opponents as enemies. It shouldn't be that we've got violence being inflamed and tensions being inflamed to get to the point of violence or harassment. That is wrong, and that should not happen. And I'm worried about the increase of that in the political form in general. I'm worried about that polarization. And I just want to encourage people, we can disagree, we can have different opinions, but it shouldn't come to a place of violence, obviously, and it shouldn't get to a place of harassment.
Monsieur, c'est en français, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, donc pour ma sécurité personnellement, ce que j'ai dit dans le passé, je vais répéter, je suis les conseils des GRC concernant ma sécurité, mais en général, je suis inquiété par la hausse de la violence ou le harcèlement dans la vie politique. Je sais que particulièrement pour les femmes, c'est vraiment inquiétant parce que ça décourage des femmes de s'impliquer dans la politique. Et ça, c'est la mauvaise chose parce que ça va réduire l'implication des femmes et des autres communautés marginalisées. Et ça va nuire à nos efforts d'avoir une démocratie qui fonctionne. Donc, j'ai un message dans notre système politique, dans les discours politiques, c'est tout à fait d'accord d'avoir des désaccords. C'est important d'avoir des débats. Et on peut avoir des débats fermes et on peut avoir des positions fortes aussi. Mais c'est inacceptable d'inflammer la violence ou le harcèlement. Ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on doit collectivement dire, c'est inacceptable. On veut créer un espace où les gens sont sécuritaires. Et oui, on peut avoir des débats et des désaccords.
You have a follow-up?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Just one more for you here. Will you be making any changes to campaign events heading into the next election?
In terms of campaign events, we're going to follow, again, the advice of security professionals. So the RCMP are the folks that we listen to in terms of best practices. I'm going to continue to be accessible to the public. I'm going to continue to be in the public. I think it's very important. But we also want to make sure that we're bringing the tensions down. Again, it's okay to have disagreements. People can come up to me and tell me that they don't like a policy or that they love a policy. People do both a lot. More so people are very positive. So I guess I'm really thankful for that. But whatever it is, we need to make sure that people feel safe. And it should not come to a point where people are feeling threatened with violence. People aren't threatened with harassment. That's wrong. So I'm going to be public. I'm going to be out there doing the important work because our work is meeting with folks like the Tenant Union, hearing from people that are being gouged and ripped off by big corporate landlords. It's important to be public and hear with those folks. It's important to tour with them, to hear their stories, to see the conditions that they're living with. I'm going to continue to do that work.
Monsieur, c'est
En français.
excuse the CBC.
En français, and then I'm going to get to other questions. Je vais continuer d'être dans le public, c'est important pour moi, parce que le travail qu'on fait, c'est important. Le travail comme le fait qu'on a des rencontres avec les organismes comme le Tenant Union, un organisme qui partage les histoires des locataires qui sont exploités par les grandes entreprises. C'est important de faire ce travail, donc je vais continuer de faire ce travail. Je vais suivre les conseils des GRC pour ma sécurité, mais mon engagement, c'est que je vais continuer d'être présent dans l'espace public. Je vais continuer de rencontrer les gens parce que le travail qu'on fait, c'est un travail vraiment important.
Okay, we'll go to City TV next.
You saw what happened on Saturday. What was your initial reaction in drawing lines to yourself? Because I've been at events when people have started to
First off, I want to be very clear. I denounce unequivocally the attempted assassination on President Trump, and there's no place for that. It's completely wrong. There's no place for that. It's just horribly wrong. I wish the speedy recovery of those injured, and my heart breaks for the father that tried to save and protect his family that lost his life. And this is wrong. It should not happen. People should be able to go to public events. We want people to engage in politics, and this type of violence puts a chill on that. And I'm worried about that. I also know that there is a climate that is increasing, a polarization and extremism of violence that's increasing. And I want to put a stop to that. I want us to be able to have discussions, disagreements, even vehemently disagree and vehemently agree with policies that you like. But we can't have a place in politics, in our civic discussions, where people are afraid, where there's violence, where there's harassment. That's obviously wrong, and that should not be happening. And so for myself, I've been in situations where I've been worried about the safety of the people around me, and I've been worried about what might happen. I trust the good work of the security professionals that we have. The RCP do great work to keep us safe, and I'm going to continue to do my work. It's not going to in any way stop me from doing the work that I do, because I know how important it is. People like the tenant union need someone that's going to stand up for them and be their voice. For renters that are getting ripped off by big corporations, who are they going to turn to? The Liberals have let them down. The Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, wants to pour fuel on the fire. He wants to let these big corporations rip you off even more. He doesn't want any rules or regulations for his buddies. He wants them to make even bigger profits and jack up your rents and rip you off. He's not going to stand up for you. So we're the only ones that are going to say, hey, this is wrong. Corporations, corporate landlords that are exploiting people, or ripping off their tenants, jacking up their rents is wrong. And we're the only ones that are going to fight for them. And I want folks to know that we're going to continue to do that.
But being a person that's in charge of a political party, you saw what happened with Trump. Did you draw lines? I know you're in different spectrums of the political spectrum, but did you have a personal moment there? Did you go, oh my heavens, this is not right?
Well, absolutely. I had an immediate reaction. This is not right. And on a personal note, I would say I don't think any political leader who's been in public spaces when there's tension has ever ignored that voice in their head that said, hey, what might happen? Could something bad happen here to my team, to my family? I think that's a real thought that goes through people's minds. And I'm worried about what that means. I'm worried about what that means for people. I'm trying to recruit candidates, and sometimes they tell me, I'm worried about how polarized politics is right now, and I don't want to get into politics. That's a problem. That's a problem when good people don't want to come forward because they're worried about how scary things are. That should not be how things are. Clearly, I think people hearing this will agree with me that we should not have a political climate where people are afraid of violence and harassment and don't want to get into politics because of that. Clearly, there's something wrong here. So we don't want to have that climate. And I'm going to do everything I can, bring down the tension. We can criticize our opponents. We can have strong debates. But we should be clear, our political opponents are not our enemies. And we don't want to create a sense in people's minds that these are enemies. We disagree with people. They might have bad decisions they're going to make, decisions that could hurt people. But that's a political discussion that we need to have. And we have to be very clear that these are decisions that people can then vote on. We want people to be going to the voting polls. We want people to go to rallies and show up if you care about something. We don't want people to be afraid. And I want to send that message clearly.
Okay, we're going to go to questions on Zoom next.
Sure.
Nous allons prendre les questions sur Zoom. Veuillez utiliser la fonction lever la main pour poser votre question. We will take now questions on Zoom. Please use the raise hand function to ask your question. Nous allons commencer avec Marie Chabot avec Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour, madame.
Je m'intéresse aussi à la question de la menace sur les élus. La première ministre, Danielle Smith, a dit qu'il y a une responsabilité aussi de la part des politiciens de gauche de ne pas caractériser leurs opposants conservateurs de manière trop drastique par des propos comme en disant Pierre Poilievre est dangereux. On est en train, selon elle, d'alimenter la polarisation. Est-ce que vous reconnaissez qu'il y a peut-être un examen de conscience à faire de la part de votre part, mais aussi de la part de d'autres politiciens par rapport à comment ils parlent de leurs opposants?
Je pense que la question est importante, donc je vais prendre un moment. On doit être direct avec la population, on doit critiquer nos adversaires politiques, on doit souligner comment leurs politiques vont avoir un impact négatif sur la vie des gens, ça c'est important. Donc on ne doit pas hésiter de faire ça. En même temps, il y a une différence entre des critiques, des décisions, des politiques, nos adversaires politiques. Il y a une différence entre ça et de dire que nos adversaires politiques sont des ennemis. Et la violence n'a aucune place dans nos débats. Donc ça, c'est la différence et je pense que c'est important de souligner l'importance d'avoir des débats intenses, ça c'est important, mais on ne doit pas avoir la violence. Ça, c'est la ligne rouge.
Vous dites quand même qu'il y a une certaine polarisation qui est en train de se passer au Canada. J'entends qu'il y a la différence entre les êtres humains, puis les politiques, puis les partis, mais est-ce que vous êtes en train de dire, dans le fond, que la polarisation, elle vient juste de vos opposants ou est-ce que vous êtes capable de reconnaître qu'elle vient peut-être des deux côtés?
Je pense qu'il y a une polarisation qui existe et il y a une responsabilité des politiciens de ne pas nourrir l'extrémisme. Donc, ça veut dire qu'il y a des groupes extrémistes. Et si on rencontre les groupes extrémistes avec des propos extrémistes, ça veut dire que ces propos sont acceptables. Ça, c'est où les politiciens ont un rôle à jouer, de dire non, on ne va pas donner des espaces aux gens qui promouvoient la haine, les groupes qui promouvoient la violence, les groupes qui font la promotion de la violence contre les communautés minoritaires. Ce n'est pas acceptable, ça. Donc, ça, c'est une responsabilité importante pour tous les politiciens. Et je prends au sérieux cette responsabilité pour moi aussi. Donc, je vais toujours essayer de critiquer mes adversaires politiques dans une manière où je présente le propos, le politique, mais je ne vais pas inflammer la violence, je ne vais pas rencontrer les groupes qui font la promotion de la violence contre les communautés dans notre pays. C'est important qu'on prenne une position ferme contre ces sortes de violences.
We will now go to Jillian Piper with Global. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Thanks for taking our questions today. Global News is reporting on intelligence documents warning that some Canadians seem to think they can threaten, encourage, and cheer on political violence without consequence. What do you think should be done to crack down on violent threats against elected officials in this country?
Yeah, this is something that we're seeing, and I guess the earlier question from CDTV was alluding to this. That is a very serious problem. Like when people say, I disagree with you, that's one thing. But when there's specific threats of violence, that should be taken with the utmost seriousness. People in the public politicians should not be allowed to have threats of violence against their political opponents, people they disagree with. Those threats of violence create a climate where violence is okay. And that's very serious. That cannot be allowed. And we see that on social media. We see a climate of cheering on or encouraging violence. And that has to be something that we all collectively say clearly that is not a functioning society if people that you disagree with are threatened with physical violence. We do not want that. It should not be that you have to be prepared to endure physical violence or threats of physical violence to get into politics. We don't want that, obviously. That's not a safe place, and that's not a good place to be for politics. So I think we need to send clear denouncement of any inflaming of acts of violence. Threats of violence should not be applauded or supported or encouraged online, and we need to take clear action against those type of things.
Thank you. And my follow-up question to you, the RCMP commissioner has said that threats reported by elected officials to police often don't meet the threshold to lay a charge under the criminal code. He'd like to see new legislation to help police better respond to those threats. What do you make of that suggestion? Do you think we need a new legislation?
I'm always open to reflect on legislation that we have and see if we can improve it. I feel like we do have the tools necessary to take these. I think we have to take them seriously. I think some of the things that I've focused on in the past is looking at social media and looking at the the platforms allowing these type of threats to circulate. I think there's got to be some clear guidelines around, threats of violence should not be allowed to be circulating. We don't want to inflame or incite violence against people. I mean, these are obvious things. And I think we need to make sure that on social media, we're not seeing these type of inflammatory incitement of violence being promoted. I think that's an important step.
That was our last question. So I will give it back to you, Jagmeet, for closing remarks.
Thanks so much, Nina. Again, I just want to say a big thank you to the tenant union representing York South-Weston. They are doing clearly really good work organizing on the ground, and really importantly, to tenants out there, to people that are renting that are feeling squeezed, they're feeling ripped off. I want you to know I see you. And I know that your corporate landlord is ripping you off. And I know the rules have allowed them to do so. We want to change those rules to make sure you are protected, to make sure that you are defended. That's the role of government, to make sure you're not getting taken advantage of. I want to change the rules to protect you, so you are not getting ripped off by corporate greed and by these corporate landlords. We got your back.
Thank you very much. This concludes our press conference.
Thanks so much.